The quiet suburbs of Mesa, Arizona, are characterized by their manicured lawns, terracotta-roofed homes, and the distinct, dry heat of the Sonoran Desert. It is a place where neighbors typically know one another, where the community is tightly knit, often bound by shared faith and professional ambition. In the early summer of 2008, this sense of suburban safety was shattered not by a random act of violence, but by a tragedy that unfolded behind the closed doors of a master suite on East Queensboro Avenue. The death of Travis Alexander was not merely a crime. It was a complex psychological puzzle that would take years to unravel, exposing a dark undercurrent of obsession, manipulation, and the fatal consequences of a toxic relationship. To understand the gravity of this case, one must first understand the man at the center of it. Travis Alexander was 30 years old, a man who had, by all accounts, pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Born into a difficult family situation in Riverside, California, Travis had overcome a childhood marked by poverty and instability. He found solace and structure in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a faith that guided his adult life and provided him with a robust support system. By 2008, Travis was a success story. He was a motivational speaker and a prominent salesman for a legal services company. Friends described him as charismatic, driven, and deeply compassionate. He was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, who offered advice to younger colleagues, and who seemed to have a clear vision for his future. He wanted to be a leader, a husband, and a father. However, in early June of 2008, the vibrant energy that usually surrounded Travis went silent. He missed a scheduled conference call, which was entirely out of character for a man known for his professional discipline. He also missed a flight to Cancun, a company trip he had been looking forward to. His silence prompted concern among his close circle of friends. On June 9th, a group of these friends decided to check on him. They arrived at his home, finding his car in the driveway and the house locked. With a spare key, they entered the residence. The interior of the home seemed undisturbed at first, but as they moved toward the master bedroom, the atmosphere changed. The roommates who lived with Travis had not seen him for days, assuming he was working or already traveling. But the friends investigating that evening found a scene in the master bathroom that would haunt them forever. There, they discovered the lifeless body of Travis Alexander. It was immediately apparent that he had been the victim of a violent attack. The friends retreated and dialed 911, setting in motion one of the most high-profile homicide investigations in Arizona history. When the Mesa Police Department arrived, they were tasked with processing a crime scene that was both chaotic and filled with silent testimony. The medical examiner's report would later confirm the extent of the trauma. Travis had sustained multiple sharp force injuries and a gunshot wound to the head. The nature of the injuries suggested a high level of personal rage. This was not a robbery gone wrong or a professional hit. This was personal. The sheer number of wounds indicated an assailant who was in a state of frenzy. Detectives began the arduous process of victimology. In homicide investigations, understanding the victim's relationships is often the key to identifying the perpetrator. Travis was well liked, but as police interviewed his friends and family, one name surfaced repeatedly: Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias was an aspiring photographer and artist whom Travis had met at a company convention in Las Vegas in September 2006. They had embarked on a long-distance relationship that was described by friends as volatile. By the summer of 2008, they had officially broken up, but their interactions had not ceased. Friends of Travis told investigators that Jodi had exhibited behavior that could be characterized as stalking. There were reports of tires being slashed, email accounts being hacked, and unannounced visits. Travis had reportedly told friends that if he were ever found dead, Jodi was the one responsible. While such statements are often made in jest or frustration, in hindsight, they took on a chilling, prophetic weight. Detective Esteban Flores was the lead investigator on the case. His approach was methodical. He knew that suspicion alone was not evidence. He needed forensic proof to link Jodi Arias, who was living in California, to the crime scene in Mesa, Arizona. The breakthrough in the case came from a piece of technology found at the scene. Inside the washing machine, mixed in with wet bedding and clothes, investigators found a digital camera. It had been run through a wash cycle, and to the naked eye, it appeared destroyed. However, the Mesa Police Department's digital forensics unit was able to retrieve the memory card. The data on the card was damaged but not lost. Using advanced recovery software, they were able to restore a series of images that provided a minute-by-minute timeline of the day Travis died. The photos were a revelation. They showed Travis and Jodi together in the house on June 4th. There were innocent photographs of them posing together, followed by images of Travis in the shower, taken just moments before his death. The timestamps on these images were crucial. They placed Jodi Arias at the scene at the exact time the medical examiner estimated the death occurred. Furthermore, the camera had inadvertently captured images during the attack itself. Blurry, chaotic shots that showed the floor, and, most damningly, the foot of the perpetrator and the victim in distress. This was incontrovertible proof that Jodi Arias was in the bathroom when Travis Alexander was killed. Armed with this evidence, along with a bloody palm print found in the hallway that contained a mixture of Travis's and Jodi's DNA, the police had their suspect. However, they did not immediately reveal their hand. They wanted to see what Jodi would say. When Detective Flores first contacted Jodi, her demeanor was surprisingly calm. She claimed she had not seen Travis since April and had been on a road trip to Utah and Nevada with a detour to visit friends, nowhere near Mesa. She maintained this story even as investigators brought her in for questioning. The interrogation tapes from this period offer a fascinating study in criminal psychology. Jodi was articulate, polite, and seemingly cooperative, yet her story was riddled with inconsistencies. She claimed she had rented a car for her trip because she wanted to save mileage on her own vehicle. However, records showed she had rented a white Ford Focus in Redding, California. Curiously, she had also borrowed gas cans from a former boyfriend. This detail was significant. By carrying extra fuel, she could minimize stops at gas stations, thereby avoiding credit card trails and surveillance cameras. It suggested a level of premeditation that contradicted any claim of a spontaneous visit. As the interrogation continued and Detective Flores presented her with the evidence, specifically the undeniable proof of her presence at the house, Jodi's story shifted. This was the first of several major narrative pivots. Confronted with the fact that her DNA was at the scene, she abandoned the "I wasn't there" defense. Her new story was that she and Travis had indeed been together, but that they had been attacked by two masked intruders. She described a harrowing scene where ninjas broke in, killed Travis, and attacked her, though she miraculously escaped with her life. She claimed she didn't go to the police because the intruders threatened her family. This story, fantastic and lacking any corroborating evidence, was quickly dismantled by investigators. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence of other individuals, and the forensic timeline established by the camera only showed two people in that house, Travis and Jodi. Eventually, Jodi was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. As the case moved toward trial, the defense strategy shifted once again. The intruder story was discarded. In its place came a claim of self-defense. Jodi admitted to killing Travis but argued that she did so to protect her own life. She alleged that Travis had been abusive, both physically and psychologically, and that on the day of his death, he had attacked her, forcing her to fight back. This set the stage for a courtroom battle that would captivate the nation. The trial began in 2013, nearly 5 years after the murder. The prosecution, led by Deputy County Attorney Juan Martinez, was aggressive and meticulous. Martinez painted a picture of a jealous, obsessive ex-girlfriend who could not accept that Travis was moving on. He argued that the murder was premeditated, pointing to the gas cans, the rental car, and the fact that Jodi had dyed her blonde hair brown shortly before the trip allegedly to alter her appearance. The prosecution also focused on the sequence of events revealed by the medical examiner. The forensic evidence suggested that Travis was attacked first in the shower, sustaining multiple stab wounds. The gunshot wound to the head, the prosecution argued, was likely the final blow, delivered to ensure he was dead. This sequence contradicted the self-defense theory. If one is fighting for their life against an attacker, the injuries typically reflect a struggle to escape. The sheer number of wounds on Travis, and the fact that he had defensive wounds on his hands, indicated he was the one trying to survive, while Jodi was the aggressor. The defense team presented a narrative focused on domestic violence and psychology. They called upon experts to testify that Jodi suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and that she was a battered woman. They argued that Travis lived a double life, the public, wholesome motivational speaker versus a private abuser. To support this, they had Jodi testify on her own behalf. Jodi Arias spent 18 days on the witness stand, an unusually long time for a defendant. She detailed their relationship, describing it as intense and often humiliating. She recounted instances of alleged abuse, trying to explain why she stayed and why she eventually snapped. However, her testimony was often contradictory. Under the withering cross-examination of Juan Martinez, cracks began to appear in her demeanor. Martinez methodically picked apart her claims, highlighting the inconsistencies between her diary entries, which spoke lovingly of Travis, and her testimony of abuse. He pointed out that she had sent Travis flowers and love letters even after the alleged abuse occurred. One of the most pivotal moments in the trial was the analysis of Jodi's psychological state. The prosecution brought in a clinical psychologist who diagnosed Jodi with borderline personality disorder. This condition is characterized by unstable relationships, intense fear of abandonment, and impulsive behavior. The expert testified that Jodi's actions, the stalking, the changing stories, the intense rage, were consistent with this diagnosis. It suggested that the murder was not a reaction to abuse, but a reaction to rejection. Travis was planning to go to Cancun with another woman, and the prosecution argued that this was the catalyst. Jodi could not have him, so no one else would. The jury was tasked with sifting through months of testimony and thousands of pieces of evidence. They had to decide between three possibilities. Was this self-defense, a crime of passion, or cold-blooded, premeditated murder? The concept of premeditation was central to the verdict. In Arizona law, premeditation doesn't necessarily require a long-term plan. It simply requires a period of time, however brief, where the individual reflects on their intent to kill. The prosecution argued that the planning began in California with the gas cans, but even if the jury didn't believe that, the sequence of the attack, the time it took to inflict the injuries, the pause between the stabbing and the shooting, offered ample time for reflection. Furthermore, the cleanup was extensive. Jodi had attempted to clean the crime scene, washing the camera and bedding, and deleting the photos. This behavior indicated a consciousness of guilt, not the panic of a victim. On the 8th of May 2013, the jury reached a verdict. They found Jodi Arias guilty of murder in the first degree. The verdict was a validation of the investigative work performed by the Mesa Police Department and the forensic team. It was an acknowledgement that the physical evidence, the camera, the DNA, the timeline, spoke louder than the defendant's shifting narratives. Following the guilty verdict, the trial moved to the sentencing phase. This was a capital case, meaning the death penalty was on the table. The same jury that convicted her had to decide whether she should live or die. During this phase, the focus shifted back to the victim. Travis's siblings took the stand to deliver victim impact statements. They spoke of the hole left in their lives, of the future Travis would never have, and of the pain of seeing his reputation dragged through the mud during the trial. These statements served as a powerful reminder that amidst the media circus and the legal maneuvering, a real family was grieving a profound loss. The sentencing phase proved difficult. The jury deadlocked, unable to reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty. A second jury was empaneled solely for the purpose of sentencing, but they too deadlocked in early 2015. Under Arizona law, if a jury cannot agree on the death penalty, the judge must sentence the defendant to life in prison. The only decision left for the judge was whether that life sentence would come with the possibility of parole after 25 years, or be natural life without the possibility of release. In April 2015, Judge Sherry Stevens delivered the final sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jodi Arias would spend the rest of her natural life incarcerated at the Arizona State Prison Complex. The judge cited the extreme cruelty of the crime and the lack of genuine remorse as factors in her decision. The case of Travis Alexander's murder remains a significant study in modern criminal justice for several reasons. First, it highlighted the role of digital forensics. The deleted images on the camera were the smoking gun that destroyed the suspect's initial alibi. In an age where we leave digital footprints everywhere, this case demonstrated that technology is often the silent witness that cannot lie. Second, the case sparked a massive conversation about domestic violence and the gender dynamics of abuse. While the defense tried to portray Jodi as a victim, the evidence pointed to her as the abuser, the stalker, the manipulator, and ultimately, the destroyer. It challenged the public's perception of what a predator looks like. It served as a stark reminder that abuse is not limited by gender and that obsession can manifest in lethal ways, regardless of who the perpetrator is. The legacy of Travis Alexander is often overshadowed by the notoriety of his killer, which is a common tragedy in high-profile true crime cases. However, those who knew him continue to speak of his kindness and his potential. His family has worked to keep his memory alive, focusing on the positive impact he had on his community and his church. They emphasize that he was a young man seeking to build a good life, whose trust and compassion were exploited in the worst possible way. The investigation into his death was a triumph of procedural justice. From the patrol officers who secured the scene, to the lab technicians who recovered the data, and the detectives who methodically dismantled the lies, the system worked to uncover the truth. It was not a swift process. It took 7 years from the crime to the final sentencing, but it was a thorough one. As we reflect on this case, it leaves us with uncomfortable questions about the nature of relationships and the masks people wear. Travis Alexander invited someone he cared for into his home, believing he was safe. It forces us to ask, how well do we truly know the people we let into our lives? And when does passion cross the line into possession? In the end, justice was served in the legal sense. The perpetrator is behind bars, no longer a threat to society. But for the Alexander family, the sentence provides only a measure of closure, not a cure for the loss. The empty chair at their table remains. The story of Travis Alexander is a somber reminder to look beyond the surface, to recognize the signs of toxicity, and to value the sanctity of life. It is a story of a bright light extinguished too soon, and the relentless pursuit of the truth that finally brought his killer to account.